I'm Ignorance.Kaplan, and I'm glad you're here for my presentation. Before starting, I would like to thank Andre Duplessis and Marisa Grissel and everyone involved in organizing and presenting AfroLex 2021. And an extra special thanks to my doctoral mentor, Professor Rufus H. House. Please email me if you would like to have your own PDF of the original article. This presentation includes expressions that I would never use outside of a scholarly and mature context. I also present a relentless attack on the established order, which is based on patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, racism, capitalism, Western and European values, classicism, speciesism, and so on. If any of this sounds like it might offend you or make you uncomfortable, please stop viewing now. Real inclusion is found in authentic regard, where there is genuine respect, tolerance, and consideration. Linguistic othering and oppression can only be eradicated from the inside. All forms of oppression and othering are connected, and each time that othering language is utilized and/or othering actions are perpetrated, further othering language and othering actions are promoted. No one is born a patriarch, sexist, racist, xenophobe, or otherwise hate-filled and othering person. Fearing, hating, demonizing, oppressing, brutalizing, and exploiting others is learned through society, culture, and language. This is accomplished mostly through social and cultural constructions, including races, genders, gender roles, religions, and whatever is uncritically believed to be normal. Since language, culture, and society are inextricably intertwined, if a language is not inclusive, then how could the society that uses it be? The Christian Bible provides the foundation for two key anthropocentric beliefs: the doctrine of Imago Dei, image of God, and the doctrine of dominion over creation, which basically means that humans can do whatever they want with nature. In the USA, the so-called manifest destiny was supposedly preordained by their God to expand throughout North America and exercise hegemony over its neighbors. According to Cañete Villafranca and Brito Pérez, humans, on account of their intellectual development, proclaim themselves as masters over nature and the center of everything. This anthropocentrism dictated a human behavior that not only threatened their own existence, but also that of other living beings and of the planet itself. The immoral essence of anthropocentrism is that humans have exploited nature far beyond their real needs. The paraphrase of meaning is concise, accurate, and free of bias. They might consider contrasting anthropocentrism with biocentrism and/or ecocentrism. A usage note might serve to give insight into how anthropocentrism reflects a great deal of selfishness, ignorance, and insecurity. Anthropocentrism is selfish since humans have been and continue to live at the expense of the environment and nature in general. Ignorant since the universe has existed for billions of years and humans have been around for a comparatively immeasurably small amount of time, and it is exceedingly unlikely that human beings are the most significant entity. Insecure since only those who know deep down that they are of little worth try to compensate by giving themselves the importance that they lack. They might explore how humans are destroying the planet as well. Macmillan, not much new here. Random House, humans are the ultimate goal of the universe? Then why bother with anything else, right? Since anthropocentrism represents the ultimate in self-aggrandizement, perhaps it is the original source of all othering. White supremacists who fear and hate any people who are not also white are obviously self-aggrandizing racists. Males who fear and hate females are clearly self-aggrandizing sexists and misogynists, and so on. Messages in the documentary include: poverty and a lack of technology are the result of not consuming enough red meat. It is a God-given right to enjoy a juicy hamburger. The name of the documentary is The Whopper Virgins, which yet again targets those responding to the sexy cells objectification and trivialization of all females. The experiments took place in third world countries. The experimentees were ridiculed and trivialized by having them wear traditional garbs made to appear childlike and innocent, and so on. Eating meat is a part of what society and culture construct to be a male. Real men are aggressive conquerors. What better reminder of this than eating flesh? They can't be seen eating an alternative like soy. The Urban Dictionary weighs in with a top definition out of over 70, and among them all, over 75,000 thumbs ups and thumbs down. Such a definition might reflect man-sized helpings of fear, hate, homophobia, misogyny, and othering. There are many manifestations of wealth, only one of which is economic. Countries that are not capitalistic perhaps consider the promotion of health, education, safety, and general well-being of those who live there to not be just about the money. Advocating for nature and those that do not have a voice or are marginalized should be a part of socially aware and responsible lexicography. Will any of the analyzed dictionaries reflect any of this? This is a Western and Eurocentric biased paraphrase of meaning. Oxford might consider including a usage label such as Western and Eurocentric or even colonialist. Longman could also add an appropriate usage label. As with Oxford, a usage note mentioning that poor economically does not mean poor morally, socially, or culturally. Denigrating nations that have not embraced capitalism zealously is unjustified. Saying some people think this expression is offensive makes it sound like these people are being unreasonable and or oversensitive and are therefore being othered for being sympathetic to the needs of other people. They probably meant Global South when they wrote Third World can also be called the South. Global South is almost as insensitive as Third World. Not much new here. The second sentence makes it sound like if you are with us or you are against us, or you don't even count. Usage labels can be more specific than offensive, dated, or derogatory. In this case, they could have been more precise as in Eurocentric, othering, or capitalistic. Aside from the expression othering third world countries, there is also the othering when using it to refer to substandard conditions or when something is simply bothering someone in the first world. Not to mention the daily othering of people perceived to be third world as in so where do you come from? Or your kind only make trouble. On account of their anthropocentric, capitalistic, patriarchal, xenophobic, and exploitative viewpoints, Western and Eurocentric countries would never even consider that these so-called backward nations were just fine the way they were and would be a lot better off if the imperialistic and colonialist countries just let them be. The same goes for the environment and nature in general. It does not always have to be about the money. Currently, happily, white people caught using this word to disparage a black person or peoples in general may be held accountable. But the fear and hate that many have is still there. Since they were convinced that there were no witnesses, they spoke freely and from the heart. These white supremacists talked about many things, including fucking well-known political niggers, the same way, for instance, that slaveholders reinforced their colonial power by raping their slaves. They also reminisced about the time when niggers were slaves, expounded on the virtues of tasering and murdering niggers, etc. They manifested quite a bit of fear, hate, vilification, and the continued readiness to exploit and to inflict harm. So to these white supremacists, those with black skin are less than human. They are just niggers. What, if anything, has changed in the last several centuries? Since black people have been marginalized and othered for centuries, nigger has unsurprisingly been used as other and niggerized for othering for well over a century. Females have also been marginalized and othered, so they too were niggerized to ensure their continued oppression. This is an outstanding article. Please read it at your leisure, pausing this video if need be. All three sentences are accurate, and in order to help ensure that users are aware of the usage notes, they have the text "See usage" paragraph below in italics even before the paraphrases of meaning. It is worth noting that as useful as usage notes can be, many, if not most, users do not read them, especially if they use a dictionary as a quick reference to consult and get back to whatever they were doing. Therefore, in many or most cases, unless a user reads all the way through, further insight into the offensive, derogatory, vulgar, etc. character of the lemma would not be known. With an expression like nigger, nothing should be left to chance, something Merriam-Webster reflected. Their insight into how offensive and inflammatory this word is even included in a well-informed comment on reclamation. Just because an expression is reclaimed does not mean that every member of the group or community embraces it. In addition, they cared enough to own up sincerely, as opposed to the usual social apology, if that much, to an instance when they did not regard black people with the respect and regard they should have. In all, Merriam-Webster has provided a bias-free, inclusive, and egalitarian treatment for this expression, and users reading the full article would be that much more likely to express themselves in a bias-free, inclusive, and egalitarian manner. The word is labeled as offensive, and the paraphrase of meaning is accurate enough, but as a whole it is kind of sanitized. An expression such as nigger would be better labeled as racist or perhaps extremely racist and contemptuous. To their credit, the word contemptuous is in the paraphrase of meaning. The usage note starts off well, the first two sentences being helpful. Also referred to as the N-word, though, should be explained. For example, with, this word is so laden with hate that it is commonly euphemized as the N-word. Their did you know type section is rather shoddy. Between black people who use this word, it can indeed be neutral, but it is often more positive as in addressing an esteemed person or at least one with whom there is a certain solidarity. Nigger is too significant an expression to get such short treatment. A usage note would be recommended, as this is a word that will highly likely have a user try to gain more insight. Used as a disparaging term for a black person is too little. The most disparaging term might be better, or perhaps something along the lines of contemptuously disparaging, etc. They label the expression as offensive slang. It certainly is offensive, but probably not slang. The word has been around too long, and the hateful and racist connotations have been there for centuries. On the plus side, the excellent quote was fitting. Merriam-Webster did what a quality dictionary should do, and they did it superbly. Their treatment of this expression showed the kind of respect that all people deserve. In addition to reflecting a deep understanding of this word within the linguistic, cultural, and social context, they also recognize the responsibility that dictionaries have to their users and to society. In the face of a normally racist, sexist, capitalistic, patriarchal, and colonialist culture, society, and language, the bias-free, inclusive, and egalitarian treatment Merriam-Webster provided for this expression is radical. In a patriarchal society, many males think that they can do whatever they want to females, decide for them, and so on. When males perpetrate violence against females, the physical violence is usually accompanied by verbal violence, and words such as bitch, whore, and cunt are a mainstay. Regardless of how much progress is supposedly made, or how certain issues are made more visible, all it takes is a flash to harshly be reminded of how things truly are. There are many ways in which males brutally keep females down. The denigration, abuse, torture, and humiliation of human females have their ultimate expression through rape, prostitution, and pornography. Gender-based street harassment plays a less obvious part of this continuum of fear, hate, violence, and oppression. This incident consisted of a brutal physical attack, a vicious verbal assault, and there were multiple males who took it upon themselves to police what the victim wore, said, and did. Such occurrences are so commonplace that no one around her did anything, or were afraid of the consequences if they did. Perhaps to them, boys will be boys, and it is best to let the boys have their harmless fun. When will it be safe for females to do something as simple as walk along a street in the center of a large cosmopolitan city called by some the capital of Europe during daytime hours? The answer is not before, during, nor for the foreseeable future after 2020. When is enough truly enough? Since there is no shortage of senses for this word, please feel free to proceed at a pace that you are comfortable with by pausing and restarting. One regrettable aspect shared by all of these lexicons is that they make it seem like the word bitch exists in a vacuum. which tacitly legitimizes its use in most contexts. Random House readily labels senses as slang, but is very reluctant to alert to the disparaging and contemptuous use of this word. Slang, slang, and more slang, but no interest in informing their users of the fear, hate, and vilification. Not much new here. As a whole, based on the usage labels, these lexicons give the impression that only under very specific circumstances can bitch be offensive. Yet perhaps only cunt is a more sexist, derogatory, and contemptible manner to address and or refer to a female. Squaw is even worse, but bitch and cunt are much more prevalent. Nowhere in the articles is there any sensitivity in relation to the victims of this slur. An appropriate usage note would help users to better understand the othering and the role bitch plays in oppressing females. So equipped, users might reduce or perhaps even eliminate their use of this loathsome expression. An additional usage note could also explore the use of bitch as an empowering and solidarizing expression among females. The drudge squaw was invented by the invaders long before poverty, abuse, and oppression plagued native peoples. The uncivilized squaw justified taking over Indian land, eased the conscience of those who wished to sexually abuse without consequence, and was handy to greedy consumers. Dirty and lazy, she excused those who removed her children and paved the way for assimilation into mainstream culture. She allowed for the righteous position of those who participated in the eradication of native culture, language, and tradition. Returning to the landscapes, locations with this name serve as daily reminders as to how colonialist, sexist, and racist white people see these women. As ridiculous as it may seem to ask, how might white women feel about names like Pussy Park or Twat Trail? Sounds ludicrous, right? And yet these would only be sexist names. Location names like Big Squaw Valley and Little Squaw Creek are also repulsively racist and colonialist. And for the vile female, there might be Bitch Beach or Wench Way. Why must it only be the victims, allies, and egalitarians who are forced to understand? Many people looking up this expression are not aware of the hateful and vilifying extent of it. That's where a good dictionary should come in handy. This expression is not just offensive. It is disgustingly racist, repugnantly sexist, obscenely colonialist, and appallingly misogynist. It's not enough to use the generic label offensive. Suggestions include labels that include all of the following together: racist, sexist, colonialist, and misogynist. Merriam-Webster Sense 1, now usually offensive. In reality, it has been extremely offensive to Native American women for centuries. Sense 2, may be dated, always disparaging. American heritage, nothing new. Paraphrases of meaning should be bias-free and inclusive. In the squaw example, for instance, there were no senses for female genitalia, nor for females considered to be disposable. Leaving them out also sanitizes the two included senses and silences the victims. Here is a bias-free, inclusive, and egalitarian article for the expression squaw with all the trimmings, but without information overload. Such an article might lead, for instance, to a person deciding against wearing an Indian princess getup for themselves or a cared person on a costume-wearing occasion, such as Halloween. There is so much insensitivity, brutality, othering, and willful ignorance in our society, culture, and language. Lexicographers can play a meaningful role in vanquishing them by properly labeling lemmas, providing bias-free and inclusive paraphrases of meaning, and by incorporating usage notes that describe othering and oppression for what they truly are. In doing so, awareness of the needs of others will increase, since lexicons would not be defending the established order. I thank you sincerely, and I look forward to your questions and constructive criticism. Goodbye.